Hello and welcome to our Pattoon in-depth tutorial. My name is Oliver and I will guide you through all the major settings of the Pattoon plugin. To see all the effect controls in the effect control panel in After Effects, you have of course to apply Pattoon to a layer, and that could be any layer in After Effects. It works on really any layer. We showcase that on a text layer, and so let's drag the Pattoon plugin to the text layer and it will start to apply a checker pattern to your layer. And if you first time install Pattoon and you click that little thumbnail, this is what in general opens your bitmap library. You will see the major settings tab of Pattoon, and this is where you can set some additional features in After Effects. Let me go through this step by step. So in general, you have a main base folder. This is on your local device in Program Data and Pattoon. And in addition to this root folder, you can set up to 4 other folders to browse maps and load maps into Pattoon. And that could be local folders or even network folders. And to set them, simply click the Set button, browse to the folder you like to import, hit OK, and that will store in the main settings and will be stored there until you change that. So each time you start After Effects, you have your complete library only one click aside. The next option is Show Patterns from the Adobe Cloud library. So for example, if you are on Adobe Cloud license and if you're working with the Adobe Capture app, then you have access to all the patterns you do on this device. So if you go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, you can download the Adobe Capture app and you can do some very cool patterns on your mobile device. And in general, these patterns are stored to your CC library and you can see them in After Effects, like you see here on the right side. But they are grayed out, so you don't have access to them. You only have access to these patterns in Photoshop and Illustrator. But we thought that could be a cool feature in motion design to have access to these patterns. And so if you check that, you will have all your patterns in your cloud library inside Pattoon. You don't have to do anything. They are automatically synchronized with Pattoon, with your CC Cloud library. You don't have to import them. If you check that box, the patterns are in After Effects. The next feature is automatically import Photoshop patterns in any folder. That means if you are working on Photoshop, you know that you find a ton of very cool patterns in the internet. Mostly are free. For example, if you browse for free Photoshop patterns, as I did here, you will find a ton of free Photoshop patterns. The most are tileable and mostly they are looking very cool. But there is one thing, you only can download them and use them in Photoshop because they are PAT files. So for example, I go to Brush Easy. By the way, I don't get paid from Brush Easy or have any benefits. It's just to showcase you what this feature can do. You have these grungy lines or these camouflage patterns, for example, and they're very cool and they're free. You can download them and you get a PAT file, and you can import this PAT file in general to Photoshop, but with this option you can import PAT files directly into After Effects and use Photoshop patterns in After Effects for your artwork, for your background, for your designs, whatever. This is a very cool feature. I will showcase you all this in a few minutes. And the last option is save folder settings for all users. So you can save all these major settings for all users on this machine or only for a single user. So if you uncheck that, it's only saved for you as your own user. Other users who don't can set their own paths and their own libraries. So this is the save folder settings for all users. Of course, you can register the Pattoon plugin here, and the first time you start, you can leave all settings as default and simply hit OK. And then this library settings window will never show up again if you click this little thumbnail icon here. If you click it, it opens up your library. I will go through this in, I promise, 1 minute. Let me first go to the settings. Here is the reset button. So here you can reset all Pattoon settings to default. Here is the settings window. If you want to change some of your settings, you can open that over the settings window. and here is the About window that shows you which version of Pattoon is already installed on your machine. The next is the option to switch between source, between file and layer. This is a setting I will explain by the end of the tutorial. We leave it on file to see the major idea of Pattoon. So if you click now this little thumbnail here, it will opens up the library. And all these maps are shipping with Pattoon. So you have the whole library here, and all of these maps are shipping with Pattoon. And of course you can customize this library to your own. You can import your own graphics, you can import your own folder structure, you can handle all these. So the basic is clicking a texture and apply the texture to your design. And this is how easy it works. Simply choose a texture and it's applied to your layer. Okay? Importing artwork is quite easy. You click import file, browse to the file you like to import, click on that. I did that before. Click on that, hit import, and it will show up here in your library. You can import complete folders with all the bitmaps in, and they will show up in the library here. Or you can click the show folder in the US. This opens the main root folder, which is on your local device, program data Pattoon. And this is on Windows. And here you have all the folders with all the graphics in. For example, let's go to the grounds folder, open that, and you see here all the maps stored inside that folder. You can delete maps if you don't like them anymore. For example, this one, simply right click, delete. And if you close this folder and hit the refresh button, you will see this map will be deleted inside your library. Here we go. And this is the same how you can import files, so show folder in US. And if you are in the main root in Pattoon, you can make own folders. You can simply copy paste maps to one of these folders or even to a new folder. And if you click the refresh button, this folder will show up in your library. And if you click on the folder, it will show you all the maps that are in this folder. If you have subfolders, it will look like this. You have a folder and a subfolder, and inside the subfolder are the graphics. So for example, I go to the ArcMat. So the next is lock pattern. What is this for? For example, if you move your layer, you will see that the bitmap stays in the background. Okay? And to lock the map to the layer, you simply click the lock pattern. That will resize the map to its original size according to the size of the layer. And of course you can scale it down over the scale option. And now if you move the layer, the map stays perfectly attached to the layer. Okay? So this is what lock pattern is for. Then we have different tile modes. Let me uncheck that and bring it back to 100%. Here we go. So next is we have the tile mode. To showcase you that, I use the black solid. Let me solo that layer and apply a Pattoon to that. I have to check a pattern. Let me choose, what do we choose? Let me choose this grunge map. So this is what you got, and if you start scaling this, maybe scale it down, you will see it starts to tile automatically, but the tiling looks, like tiling look. It tiles the maps. So this is why we came up with the idea to give you different options. For example, you can change the mode from tile to mirrored, which gives you this result, and that could be very handy if you have not perfectly tiled maps, but you need them as a background for a text layer or a lowest third or whatever. You can tile it by using mirror option, and this gives you this result, which is not perfect, but even better than the tiled version. Okay? You have the option to single. This comes in place if you use one of our single images, like a virtual HUD or a camera tracker. For that, we have very cool tutorials on the website, so make sure to check out our website, which is pattoon.illumi.de, and then you find here the tutorials, for example, to create a HUD, and this is where all these single elements come in place. Let me showcase you that. If you go to your library, to the HUD, and for example you choose this element, you see this is quite handy if you have a single, which is not tiled, a single image to build up your own HUD, because you can do more instances of these Pattoon plugin. So for example, if you change the blend mode to darken, or no, let's change that to screen, and you make an instance, string D on the keyboard, and you choose another object, for example this ring, you scale it up a little bit and choose another one, string D on the keyboard, and choose this one and also scale it up a little bit, and you got the idea. So you have all your elements in one stack on one layer, and you can build up your visual elements, and therefore is the single option quite handy. But we explained that in a separate tutorial, so make sure to check out our website and watch these tutorials how to do a virtual element with Pattoon inside After Effects. So go back to our tile mode. I go back to my grunge, to this, and switch it back to mirrored. So this is the result. The next is the blend mode. This is where you can blend these maps to the layer which is Pattoon applied, or even blend between several Pattoon instances to mix textures. So what does it mean? If you make an instance of this Pattoon, string D on the keyboard, and for example you choose, first let me bring this to normal to showcase you that. And now if you choose as texture a grounds texture like this, for example, you will see, let me scale it up a little bit and switch. This is a map which is perfectly tileable, so I can bring it back to tiled. It looks better. And if I change the blend mode, it starts blending this map over this map and over the background. So that means if I change that to, say, screen, this is the result. So it blends both maps over each other. And this is a very cool effect, because here you can mix textures and build new textures from several different textures in one stack, and you can save that as a preset to your preset folder, and so you have access to all of these maps mixed together in After Effects with Pattoon. So this is what the blend modes are for. One more thing to use blend modes, which is quite handy and a very cool effect. Let me bring in a video footage. So for example, this video footage, I bring that on top of that, and let me solo that, and let me apply Pattoon to that. So it starts with a checker pattern. Let's go to the grunge section and choose these lines, for example. And if I change the blend mode from normal to silhouette luma, you will see this is the result. So it blends, it gives me a alpha channel from my original video footage, and this is where I can use the stencil luma. If I choose silhouette silhouette luma, if I use the stencil luma, I have it the other way around. So I have a cool grungy line overlay over my video footage, and that could be very handy. For example, if you use some grids, for example, go to the grid section and choose this one, for example, you have a very cool grid, and of course you can scale that grid to your needs and manipulate that. So, but this is a cool feature to work with these blend methods over movie clips or compositions or even effects. So this is how it works. And also for this we have a texture mixing tutorial on our website and on our Vimeo channel. Please check that out, how to mix textures and get some very cool designs and effects. Okay, so the next is the opacity. Let me delete that for now and go back to my black solid. So the opacity, of course, as it says, is the opacity of my map. So here I can control the opacity of my texture. Scale, scale is scale. I can scale it up and down. The same is for the offset point. You can offset your texture. Of course, you can animate the offset point over time. For example, if I go to my text layer and I want to animate the offset point, I simply go to here, for example, click the stopwatch, go a few seconds and drag that to here, and you will see it animates the offset point, which could be also quite handy to have that in one stack. Okay? Let me uncheck that. Rotation is rotation. This is where you can rotate your map over the offset point. So as you see, it rotates over this point. If you bring the point to, let me say, the T, you will see if you rotate the map, it will rotate over the T. Here we go. So this is rotation of the map. Of course, you can invert the pattern's color. That could be cool or handy. For example, if you have this texture, but you like to have an icy, coolish look, simply invert the patterns, and you have a icy look. But this effect depends on which are the base colors, so because it uses the opposite and inverts all the channels. So, but it could be a very handy thing to have a icy looking thing in our case. Of course, you can tint your texture. You can choose the color, in which color you like to tint the texture. Let's take some bluish, like this. And if you play with the tint opacity, you will see it starts to tint your graphic until it's perfectly tinted. But this is an option to give you a slight better control over the mapping and over the Pattoon plugin. And of course, you can blur this. If you bring this up, you can blur the background graphic, you can blur your texture. That could be handy if you do some metal looking effects. Yeah, that's handy. So this is the blur function. That's mainly it. We have two more things, which is the mask section and the source. Let me first explain the mask section. For example, if you have different masks on your design. So for that, I make a new solid, layer new solid. And simply let me draw a few masks here. 1, 2, 3, for example. And let me solo that layer. If I now apply Pattoon to this layer, you will see all of the masks will have the same texture, which is the checker pattern. And if I change that to I like some topicals, like this. So now it applies this topical map to all of these masks. So, but if I change the mask from none to 1, it will only apply this texture to mask number 1. And now if I use an instance, string D on the keyboard, of that and choose mask number 2, I can change the design for mask number 2 and it will only apply to mask number 2. So, and so on. So you can do more instances of Pattoon in one layer and apply a different texture to a different mask on one layer. This is handy because again you can save presets, and this is how you can texturize even vector layers. If you go to a layer and auto trace them, you will get as a result different maps, and so you can texturize your vector logo with every single shape or every single mask in one stack. So you don't have to pre-compose all the time or use different instances in your After Effects program. So, sorry, you have simply one layer, and you have the whole Pattoon stack in one layer and apply different maps to this design. So. Last but not least, let's delete all of these. Let's go to the source option. So in general, the source is a map, but we give you the option to take as a source file also a layer or a composition or a movie clip or whatever. So for example, if you have a movie clip in your design, let me hide that, and you go to Pattoon on your text layer and you choose as source layer, then you have the option to choose a layer. And let's choose the HDD small moth. And this is the result. Let me undo the invert patterns color and let me scale that a little bit down. Like so. And play with the offset point. And as you see, the movie clip is the background for your text layer. And this is very useful to use Pattoon as a container for different instances of your layer stack. So this gives you the option to use movie clips as textures or use compositions as texture. You have them perfectly tiled. You can also change the tile to mirror, which gives you a better tiling result because this footage is not tileable. But if you, let me put that on the black solid to showcase you that. So let me go here to File, Layer, and choose the HD moth. And as you see, if it's tiled to mirrored, not even to tiled, which gives me this result, which could be also very cool, but if you change that to mirrored, it gives you a very cool effect, and the movie clip also plays. I mean, you can do very cool patterns with movie clips animated over this function. Okay, even if you scale it down even more, you see the result. I mean, this is a very cool feature and gives you really good creative options to make stunning designs and textures, even if they're animated. And of course, build up very cool presets, because you can again save more instances of this as a preset to your preset stack. So that's mainly it for the in-depth tutorial. I hope you got the idea what all is possible with Pattoon, how creative and how flexible you could be, and how it could be a really big time saver to put textures on text layers, your graphics, lower thirds, build very cool presets. So we have a bunch of cool tutorials on our website, not even the HUD, but also the freeze effect, which is a preset that ships with Pattoon to freeze your screen over time and to customize the ice effect, to have some very cool transitions, even a transition preset which ships with Pattoon to make a very easy and customizable transition in After Effects with rotation, with zoom, with blur, with grungy overlays. So make sure to check that out, what is possible. So I hope you got the idea what everything is possible with Pattoon, and hope you like it, and we see us on the next tutorial.